This is something that I've heard get discussed a decent amount actually recently, so I figured it could make an interesting video, which is how much does situation matter for a young quarterback? And potentially the better way to phrase it might be, how much should a team that plans on drafting a young quarterback go out and try and help out their situation? How much should you go out and add wide receivers and add offensive line and try to get the quarterback to be in as good of a position to succeed as possible when they're about to get when they enter the league? So the team that kind of feels like they're the most talked about when we do this is the New England Patriots, because I think there's been the debate of should they draft a quarterback that could succeed. There are a lot of people feel like there are three really good quarterbacks in this draft class. Should they just take one of those, or should they say, hey, our situation is not great, our receiving room is not great, and they could probably use some offensive linemen as well. So let's just try and, get a top guy there, give it a year, maybe next year we'll go after the quarterback. That's the dilemma. And part of why I think this has become a conversation so much, and I should mention too, this might be more of a general thoughts video than not a ton of graphics and stuff I'm going to be bringing up here. Kind of just more of a discussion video, which I think is still, I enjoy making them. I hope you guys enjoy watching them. But yeah, anyway, I think part of why this has become such a big discussion as of late was Bryce Young. So Bryce Young, this very hyped up prospect, gets drafted by the Carolina Panthers, and while a lot of people have said, oh wow, he's played very poorly, you could also look at the situation and say, well, maybe he isn't, and it's just a situation where he can't succeed. We have seen that before. I mean, I think Jared Goff may be the most famous example in that last Jeff Fisher year where he, it did not go very well as a rookie. In fact, he looked like unplayable as a rookie, but they get, Sean McVay, get a better situation for him, and he was able to really succeed in year two, and he's turned into a very good regardless of your opinions on Goff, he's certainly worked at the NFL level. He's made it to a Super Bowl, another conference championship. Trevor Lawrence, another example of this kind of situation where, both those guys also kind of, you could argue coaching was an issue, but still, Lawrence goes to, the Urban Meyer Jaguars, where Laviska Shenault was their number one wide receiver at points and looked like a complete mess. And then year two, they get him into a better situation and he looks better. And in that situation, I think about what the Jaguars did is they gave Christian Kirk a ton of money, and everyone made fun of that contract. What are you doing giving Christian Kirk all of that money? But I actually think it's kind of become a phrase for me of give someone a Christian Kirk contract, which for me is you're giving getting a wide receiver contract to help out your young player. Give your young player an option to throw to. That felt like that was the move, even if it's an overpay, because even if the contract itself maybe isn't the best contract, Lawrence has now played a lot better since then, and you feel great about it if you're Jacksonville, even if, how much of the contract, how much did that play into effect, we'll never know, but it might, and that's kind of the argument. So first we should talk about, is there any evidence to support that players in a better situation end up more likely to succeed? Yeah, there actually is. I did a study on this last year. Players who are drafted into a good situation are more likely to succeed than players drafted into a bad situation. And that's even more fascinating when I was doing more data for this video, when you think about the fact that quarterbacks who are drafted first overall also are significantly more likely to succeed, but the quarterbacks drafted first overall rarely are drafted into good situations. So it's very rare for a quarterback who wasn't drafted first overall and wasn't drafted into a good situation to succeed. That very rarely happens. It does happen. There are examples, so it's not like you should never do it, but it's definitely something where you're kind of maximizing your odds of a young quarterback succeeding if you give them a good situation. Someone like, I do think it's fair to say, though, one other thing I would bring up, that is not the only benefit towards drafting a quarterback in a good situation or creating a good situation around your young quarterback. You don't want to create a scenario like what the Giants created with Daniel Jones, which is Daniel Jones, a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He's not worth $40 million, but a fine quarterback, a top 32 guy in the league, right? He goes to the Giants, and For essentially his first 4 years of his career, the Giants had no idea if he was good or not because they couldn't get any semblance of an offense around him. Even the year they made the playoffs, the offense around Jones wasn't great that year either. So, and that's part of why they paid him so much money. One of the benefits of putting a young quarterback in a good situation is like, I don't know, like kind of like Trey Lance of like, oh, it's not going great. It's not going great in practice and stuff. Let's move off of him. We know this isn't working. I think part of what hurt Zach Wilson was when other quarterbacks came in, they looked significantly better than Zach Wilson. Although I do think Zach Wilson is a good example of how a bad situation can hurt a quarterback, right? Because the Jets, very bad situation for Zach Wilson. And listen, I'm not saying Zach Wilson was going to hit even if he was, drafted into San Francisco or whatever. But I do think him playing in a bad situation helped him develop bad habits. I mean, the amount of times I saw him just taking a snap and seemingly immediately running straight towards the sideline was constant. And it's because guys weren't really getting open and he was trying to make something happen. And that was kind of the only thing he could do, which was a terrible habit. You'd rather him stay in the pocket and kind of just run the offense. But being in a bad situation can teach you, bad habits and essentially turn you into a worse player, and it can hurt your development. Like, that is a very much a real thing that happens. And so it's probably worth it in a typical year to make sure that you're getting a quarterback to have a good situation. We've seen the Panthers have kind of addressed that a bit this offseason. Like, hey, let's try to make it easier for Bryce Young. In general, I think that's usually what you should do. Now, let's go back to the question I posed at the beginning of this video for the New England Patriots, the dilemma of should they draft a quarterback or should they draft a wide receiver, or maybe trade down would be the real question. Like, trade down, let someone else draft the top quarterback. You can try to build the offense, draft the quarterback next year. Well, definitely you're hurting your odds if you draft, let's say Drake May is at 3. If you draft Drake May, you're hurting his odds of succeeding. But you're also giving yourself much higher odds of a quarterback succeeding if you draft Drake May, because then you've drafted a quarterback, right? Whereas otherwise, you're going with Jacoby Brissett, and you kind of know what he is. So while you'd maximize odds in a future draft when you take a quarterback, you're also you're basically wasting a year if you don't go with any quarterback this year. And it's always better to, when you don't have a quarterback, keep drafting quarterbacks, because even if the odds are lower, there still are some odds there. So if you do like a quarterback, for me, I like Drake May enough that even though I love some of these other players, for the Patriots, if he's available at 3, I'm taking Drake May. So realistically, what I would do if I was the Patriots would be get a lot more receiver help, so that way you don't have to be in this dilemma. Again, sign a Christian Kirk contract, right? But if you can't do that and you're stuck in this situation and those are your two options, yeah, I would draft Drake May, but then maybe reach on a wide receiver or something in round 2. Try to maximize the odds of having it work out. So yeah, that's kind of how I view all of this. That is the argument for why you should make sure you draft a quarterback in a good situation, all that good stuff. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on all of this. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.